got a movie, a video game, or whatever you got, you want to start scoring it. What is the best place to start?
Start at the beginning. I always start and just kind of go through the entire film and place markers on scenes. So I very much take it as a scene-by-scene thing, and in doing that, I kind of mark a general tone or mood of that. And I feel like once you start to pick the instrumentation and that approach to it, it'll come together pretty easily. Not easily, but as far as it doesn't come together easily, but the mental aspect of it, like that part's almost over. Then you have to just think of it scene by scene because you're not worried about what instrument you're picking anymore. You've got the tone and the sound and everything. So now it's just writing music, which for me is the fun part.
Okay.
And so you take it as a scene by scene. You kind of figure out what tempo would work for that scene. Take into consideration how it ends, how it blends into the next scene. Is there a long transition? Is there time for the music to kind of play through into the next scene? And I think most people, if you've seen films, you'll have an eye for thinking, oh wow, that doesn't work.
Okay.
Or, I think approaching it individually like that helps because it also lends to having segments that you've done. You've done these different cues. So you can also go back to those ideas if you're really struggling in a different scene further on down the film or whatever the project is.
Right.
And you can kind of, there's been times where I'm like, I don't know it works here, and I'll just take an entire chunk from earlier in the film and just put it there to see what it sounds like.
Right.
How much of that I use depends on the scene, but it'll give me a starting place, and it really stops writer's block. Just keep going and push through any kind of doubt, because there's always time to go back and change things.
Right.
My primary goal is to get it done, then I'll go back and look through it, and if something doesn't work, cut it. If something is light, add something. And also don't be precious about it. The very first time I scored a film and I went back and I watched it, I thought, man, this is really quiet. They can barely hear my music, and it kind of irritated me a little bit.
Okay.
But you quickly learn that's your role.
Yeah.
Everyone has their role in these things. So as long as the director's happy, I'm happy. So just to take it by that approach, don't be precious with it. Pick your instruments, go cue by cue, and and sometimes it only needs just a low drum, just noise, so it doesn't sound so empty.
Right. Sometimes it doesn't need anything at all.
Absolutely. When Batman fought Bane in the third Dark Knight movie, there's not a drop of music in that scene, and it's very powerful.
Yeah.
I love that kind of stuff. So yeah, be willing to just take chances and try something new, and just trust your gut, I think. Because if you're trying to sound like somebody else, it's going to be for naught. So just trust your gut and do your own thing. And if you want to talk more about how to choose from a music theory base, but that can get pretty nerdy pretty quick.
Yeah, no, that's great. So let's say you've got a scene where there's someone fighting each other or something like that. How do you know where to go with that music-wise?
I think action scenes are fun because, in general, speaking from my own experiments, there's not a lot of key modulation. So you can do an entire 3-minute fight scene with one chord.
Oh, wow.
Just use everything percussively and just keep changing the inversions of everything, and because it's so percussive, there's not really any room for, unless the scene calls for it, emotional tonal change. Mm-hmm. So you're not having to worry about bouncing between major and minor chords or suspended chords or anything like that. It's so percussive that as long as you're keeping that tone of action and you're staying within that key, it's pretty easy. Not easy, but a lot of the mental work is gone. You're just writing the music.
Right. So in general, how do you know exactly what particular instruments to use where, and how do you pick that out?
I think that's probably one thing I still struggle with the most, because there is something to be said about juxtaposition. Think Star Wars. The music is the only human element of those films. Everything else is alien in space, but all the music is orchestral, so it stands out a lot. It's also John Williams, so you have that. And so I think the easy thing is to think, this is a modern film. I'm going to use synthesizers, Omnisphere, that kind of stuff. the Trent Reznor type sound if you want.
Right.
And you know, or if it's like, oh, this is a classier drama, I want to use orchestral stuff. I think that can be a trap because it always leads to the phrase that good music goes unnoticed.
Right.
And I hate that so much. Yeah. It's such a punch in the gut. Because it shouldn't. It really shouldn't. And people think that's like a compliment. It's really not. You want the music to stand out, and you want the music to be its own character. So that's what I look for when I watch movies, is I want the music to take me somewhere, to be its own thing. So a lot of the time, I will think of that when I'm writing, because it's all going to be one cohesive thing, even outside of the film, because I like to listen to soundtracks. And that can lead to all different types of choosing instruments, choosing what key you're in, how often you know change from that key depending on the scene. So I think choosing instruments can be really cool because it gives you a chance to make your music a character. Okay. But also the director might not like that. Right. They might want you to do what people are expecting. Exactly. So,
like
don't be precious. Don't be precious.
Being that background drone.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's actually funny that you made me think of that old saying, like, no one notices the bass player until they start messing up.
Exactly. Yeah, it's true.
Like,
it's true. Yeah.
Like sometimes you really just have to do that boring thing that you don't want to do, but sometimes that's really what's needed to your piece.
Yeah, and that's the other kind of the business side of this thing is, I very much look at it as providing a service and making a product. So if that's what they want, that's what they want. And that's why I think, I see it as they're paying for a product, I'm giving them a service, that kind of thing. Because if they want, the music that you would think would fit with that makes my job all the easier, because picking the instrumentation is out of, it's out of my hands. I know what to do,
Yeah.
So it can be, some jobs will be just jobs, some jobs will be passion projects, it's hopefully you're always enjoying what you're working on, but don't be precious about it and just have fun in the final product,
Okay, so let's say that you're just new at this and you're just trying to put together your first score. What would be the easiest and best way to go about doing that, using just the basic stuff that you have to your let's say, for example, you've got Ableton and you're just using the basic Ableton and you are just trying to put something together using what you got. How would you go about doing that?
I would say embrace it. Don't try to make it sound like you've got more to work with than you do. Okay. Just stick with what you've got and find, and if it's your first time, you might be a little afraid to be really creative with it, but just be willing to use that confined space to be really creative with what you have. Okay. You could have every string library in the world and still not know how to write, a good progression or anything like that.
Yeah.
So it's very much, if you've only got, a handful of samples or whatever, just find a way to use it, make it unique. But don't, if you've only got synthesizers, don't try to make them sound like strings.
Okay.
Embrace that they're synthesizers and go with that.
Right.
And just be creative and match the mood.
All right. So, how do you go about matching the mood? How do you know what to do? Could you maybe give us a few, maybe a soft template of how you would go about doing that?
I always, from the stuff that I've done, I try to find an aspect of the project that I think is the driving force of it, and I try to lock onto that. So my most recent project, the Grimoire chapters, up until the 5th or 4th episode, it's been about this character Kevin. So a lot of my music is based around Kevin. He has his own theme. He has all of these little things that I've kind of conjured up musically for him that I can fall back on. So I start with that, and I think of how I can use that point of view to influence the other aspects of it. So, if it's a sad scene, from that point of view, make it sad. I would, but also if it's really hard when you're working with really good actors because you do not want to, just don't get in their way.
Right.
There are some scenes where you just keep it light, keep it simple, and just let the actor do it because you don't need to do anything else.
So you should almost sort of think as the actors and what's going on in the film as an instrument itself, and work around that.
Yeah, I think that.
Okay.
Because if you think of it as just like I'm just writing music, it's not going to match. You need to, every actor is in the film.
Right.
Your music is in the film. The director's view is in the film. So think of the music as the place it holds in the film. So think of the point of view of the audience and try to go from there.
Okay. Cool. So, is there anything you should avoid doing when you're starting?
Man, that's a tough one. Anything to avoid? I would avoid trying too much to sound like someone else. I know I mentioned that before, but of course there's times when I try to sound like Hans Zimmer or Clint Mansell or the people that I idolize, and or Trent Reznor, and it's really easy to overdo it and start to draw those comparisons, and I don't think that's a good thing. I think if you're known for trying to emulate other people, it could kind of pigeonhole you.
Right. You'd rather be an A-rate whoever you are than a B-rate whoever they are.
Right, and that's not to say you can learn so much from doing that. So maybe in the earlier years, if you're needing help for an idea, of course there are times when I think, oh man, this would be perfect if it were like this song. And so I'll listen to that song and I'll think of what they're doing in that track to get across that idea of or the tone or the feeling of it. And then so I'll implement that into my own way of doing it. But yeah, I think it's important to draw from those who inspire you, but don't try too hard to emulate it.
Okay, cool. Well, what do you think? Is there anything we might have not talked about? Maybe something we didn't mention? Let us know in the comments. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. I post a new video every week. Also, check out Brandon Boone of the No Sleep podcast. They've got new content up all the time. It's great stuff, especially if you like creepypasta. But anyway, thank you for watching. Enjoy your evening. Please stay tuned.